I'm Brent Ferrand, coordinator of Newark's Speech and Debate Program, and on behalf of District Superintendent Dr. Clifford Janey and the Newark Public Schools, I welcome you to this documentary series showcasing debate competition in our elementary schools. The schools featured in this competition are those which emerged as the top 8 during the 2008-2009 debate season. They compete now in an elimination tournament. 8 schools began the tournament. 2 remain. The 2 schools that have advanced to the final round are Mount Vernon and Rafael Hernandez. From September through May, more than 200 debaters from 21 Newark elementary schools debated 2 resolutions. In the first half of the year, the topic was resolved that the federal government should switch incentives from big oil to alternative energy firms. And in the second half, resolved that the federal government should increase incentives for biofuels. It is the biofuels topic that will be debated in this final championship round. Academic debate is not a rehearsed performance. The debaters spend hours in research, argument development, and practices. But each debate, like any sport, is a dynamic, spontaneous struggle. You will view these debates as they happened, with all the on-field triumphs and all the on-field mistakes. There are no retakes, and the only post-production editing was the addition of transition effects and titles. We now join the championship final round. This is the final championship round for elementary school debate in Newark. Both of these teams won their quarterfinal rounds, advancing to the semifinal round, won their semifinal rounds, and now appear before us to debate the final championship round. Congratulations to both teams, Mount Vernon and Rafael Hernandez. As usual, our first order of business is a flip of coin to determine which team will take which side in this final championship round. Let's see, Mount Vernon, you're first alphabetically, so call the coin in the air. It is heads. That means that Rafael Hernandez gets choice of side. Rafael Hernandez has decided to affirm the resolution, and debating on the affirmative side from Rafael Hernandez is Brian Perapakaran and Jermaine Reyes. They are coached by Ms. Bridget Charles. On the negative is the team from Mount Vernon, and that team is composed of Koku Alase and Jonathan Isaacs, and they are coached by Ms. Whitney Ferrand. This final championship round will be judged by a panel of 3. They are as follows: Mr. Kevin Senek, a former debater from Science Park High School, currently a debater for Rutgers University. Second on the panel is Ms. Margarita Morales. She was formerly a debater from Technology High School, just recently graduated from Seton Hall University, and while a student there, she was the promotions director for 98.5 FM, the Seton Hall University radio station. And lastly on the panel is Mr. Richard Connolly, who is the coach of Bronx Academy of Letters from our sister league in New York City, the New York Urban Debate League. We are ready now to begin the final championship round. Good luck to both teams.
As we all know, the United States faces an ongoing energy crisis. According to T. Boone Pickens, the U.S. is exporting hundreds of billions of dollars each year to oil-producing countries. Furthermore, as the last year has demonstrated, rising fuel costs continue to hurt the U.S. economy. Taken together, high gas prices and this transfer of wealth greatly weakens the U.S. economy, security, and indeed long-term sustainability. Many people and oil industry employees seek to continue our dependence on imported oil, and with companies like ExxonMobil reporting record profits, it is easy to understand why. However, Others have now presented biofuels such as ethanol as a viable alternative to oil. The question now facing the U.S. is whether or not biofuels provide enough incentive and opportunity to make a shift to ethanol practical and desirable. First off, I would like to just state that global warming is a major problem in our society nowadays. Switching to biofuels will dramatically decrease global warming. An oil-based economy contributes significantly to global warming and air pollution, which unless slowed or reversed will lead to the extinction of life on Earth. There are many benefits of using biofuels. The National Resource Defense Council states that biofuels can slash global warming pollution. If we start solving this problem now by switching to biofuels, we could reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by more than 80% by the year 2050. Now, you may think that this date is far into the future. To respond to that, my partner and I would like to remind you of the following quote. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. In today's economy, according to Marketplace magazine, oil is our lifeblood. It powers our cars, heats our homes, and paves our roads. It runs through the veins of our economy every minute. We are so dependent on oil and other petroleum products that a lack of it could literally put America and the rest of our planet back in the Stone Age. It took millions of years for the Earth to make petroleum, but it will only take a few more years to use it up. When we get the last drop of oil, what will we do? Transportation is responsible for 2/3 of the nation's oil consumption and nearly 40% of U.S. global warming pollution. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, November 13, 2007, we need to wean ourselves off of oil and we should replace it with the cleanest alternatives as possible, said Patricia Monahan, Deputy Director of USC's Clean Vehicle Program. The USC report went on to state that cleanest alternative, cellulosic ethanol, a biofuel, would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by more than 85%. Biofuels are the most viable alternative to oil. It would cost the least to set up because according to Marketplace magazine, we can use the system we've already got. Just replace conventional diesel with biodiesel and even keep the same fuel pumps. Most cars can be switched to biofuels with ease. That just proves right there that it won't take a massive retooling of the infrastructure. Biofuels can come into our economy with ease. Rena Drenzer stated in the winter-spring 2009 issue of the Social Science docket, using ethanol could reduce the use of petroleum by as much as 95%. We realize that the current situation is frightening, but we must start caring now. In order to solve this major problem, our government must switch tax credits from big oil to biofuels. We are literally racing against time to reduce or reverse global warming and air pollution and save our great planet, Mother Earth. If we continue to allow these circumstances to go unchecked, we could very well have a situation on our hands where even a larger number of peoples will be dying. Is this what we want for our children and grandchildren? Do we want to be responsible for destroying life on Mother Earth? Should we sit idly by and do nothing while our great planet deteriorates? Well, my partner and I believe that the answer to these questions must be a resounding no, 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 and no. We must listen to the experts and take their advice. This problem must be fixed now. Many people believe that we are the children of the future. If we are the future, then it is up to us to do something about this problem. It is during our lifetime that we will see horrible effects of air pollution and global warming. I urge you to join my partner and me in calling an end for this unbalanced way of thinking. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Firstly, I would like to address the question, how is biofuel efficient economically if we still have to convert the equipment during the severe economical crisis?
Well, I'm so happy you asked me that question. If you're going to say that if you're going to say that that we don't have enough money in our government because of the economical crisis, well, there is. These oil companies have been given billions and billions of dollars of tax credits and subsidies and misguided regulatory schemes. This has to stop. The money that we can get if we can't get it from the government, we can get them from these oil companies.
Thank you. Second, you stated that we can switch to support biofuel.
Yes. With ease.
How do we know that the cost will be efficient? Let me reformulate the question. How do we know that once we fully switch upon this energy source, that it will be suitable to be run fully off of for this nation?
Because as I addressed in the speech, it will now take massive economic retooling or massive infrastructure retooling. We can use the same biofuel, the same oil pumps that we have, just switch it with biofuels, and it's going to be run smoothly through our country.
How are you aware that we need to utilize fossil fuels for biofuel development?
You wouldn't have to. How? Like, could you
like,
reformulate the question, please?
Reformulation is, you know how you propose biodiesel and bioethanol? Well, there still has to be some oil that needs to be utilized in order to develop your source. So how are you efficient if you
Well,
still have to utilize oil for development?
If we're talking about the farming and the growth of the prairie grasses, because let me just get this out in the open right now. The main biofuel that we want to, can I finish? The main biofuel that we want to propose is switchgrass. So, okay.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan. My partner and I represent the Mount Vernon debate team and oppose a resolution that the federal government should increase tax incentives for biofuels. The world's supply of fresh water is running out. Already 1 person in 5 has no access to safe drinking water. While the world's population tripled in the 20th century, the use of renewable water resources has grown 6-fold. Within the next 50 years, the world population will increase by another 40 to 50%. This population growth, coupled with industrialization and urbanization, will result in an increased demand for water and will have serious consequences on the environment. Although food security in America has been significantly increased in the past 30 years, water withdrawals for irrigation represents 66% of the total withdrawals and up to 90% in arid regions. 95% of the United States fresh water is underground. As farmers in the Texan High Plains pump groundwater faster than rain replenishes it, the water tables are dropping. North America's largest aquifer, the Ogallala, is being depleted at a rate of 12 billion cubic meters a year. The total depletion of this aquifer to date amounts to 325 BCM, a volume equal to the annual flow of 18 Colorado rivers. The Ogallala stretches from Texas to South Dakota and waters 1/5 of the U.S. irrigated land. What connection does this have to implementing biofuels as our primary energy source? Currently, this country relies exclusively on ethanol produced from organic matter, for example, corn and switchgrass. The primary location where these crops are grown and harvested in Kansas, which conveniently is located on the top of the Ogallala Aquifer. Farmers in this region are already struggling with irrigating the crops they are currently growing sufficiently. By making biofuels our primary energy source in America, more strain on the fresh water supply will occur. In order to depend exclusively on biofuel, which most certainly will be corn ethanol since it has already been researched, developed, and implemented, or until another source goes through the same process, America will need to increase the amount of corn it produces by 8-fold. Annually, America grows 50 to 75 million bushels of corn for ethanol production. But in order for the entire country to be fueled by this biofuel, we need close to 500 million bushels. This enormous increase will most certainly put an unnecessary strain on our already depleting fresh water supply in America. EPA.gov/WaterSense states, water covers approximately 70% of the Earth's surface, but less than 1% of that is available for human use. The world must share the small amount for agricultural, domestic, commercial, industrial, and environmental needs. Across the globe, water consumption has tripled in the last 50 years. Managing the supply and availability of water is one of the most critical natural resource issues facing the United States and the world. I'd like to address how my opponents propose the use of switchgrass. Now, we're looking at how we know that switchgrass is a type of cellulosic biofuel which needs to be irrigated and watered. Now, as I just previously stated, the water levels do not meet the criteria in order to support this energy source. And therefore, how are we going to implement this source if we don't even have the resources that are needed in order to supply it and uniformly implement it upon this nation? Also, you stated that the U.S. is exporting billions of dollars. But however, the money needed to institute biofuel is substantially high in unison with what your previous argument stated. Also, you propose that we need to replace oil with biofuel. However, how do we know that once this is implemented, it will fully support the full need for this nation, which is substantially high in this current time? Also, you said a lack of oil will cause the earth to falter. Well, how do we know that the biofuel won't fall short? How do we even know how long it will take to even implement it correctly in order to run smoothly and to have a smooth transition? And my opponents are not improving upon the environment because cellulosic biofuel impedes upon our plants, which then in turn takes away from our oxygen suppliers. So therefore, you're still hurting the environment overall. Also, you said that global warming is a problem, and switching to biofuel would decrease the global warming problem. You're contradicting your argument due to the fact. May I finish my last sentence, please? You're contradicting the argument due to the fact that biofuel has an increased amount of carbon emissions and nitrous oxide emissions, which are worse than carbon dioxide currently. And now I currently stand for cross-examination.
Is oil good for our environment?
Well, you guys didn't really ask, but we're proposing another alternative energy source, which is like hybrid cars, and we're proposing to run our factories off of solar, wind, and hydroelectric energy.
Yeah, but still, you'd use oil to run those hybrid cars and electric power energy.
Actually, we're proposing to run off of fully hybrid cars. And as you know, there's a Honda and Toyota car, the Toyota Prius, that currently is fully electric, and it was just produced in 2009.
So you're pro hydroelectric.
Hybrid and solar and all that. You know.
But you're water. You're using water. Hydroelectricity is water.
Hybrid electricity.
But you're not using.
You know, I said
As
solar,
you just
wind.
stated, hydroelectricity.
Yeah, but hybrid. You know.
But before that, you stated hydro.
Yes, but that's a
Okay.
last resort.
All right. Does oil contribute to global warming?
Yes, which is why we propose the use of other alternative energy sources.
All right. Are you aware that asthma and lung diseases have been occurring with oil?
Well, to combat that, in retrospect, you proposed use of switchgrass and corn ethanol and all those types of cellulosic biofuel in general. And you have to use pesticides in order to keep the pests from there. So then when you burn and utilize these pesticides, it causes health problems as well.
But if I may interrupt, if I gave you proof that there is a cleaner alternative to oil and is also better than hybrid and hydroelectricity that you're wanting to propose, if I give you all of that proof, will you be willing to acknowledge or consider biofuels?
No, because there's still flaws, and we don't even know that it can be generally implemented fully upon this nation, at which it currently isn't.
All right, how many tax credits have been distributed between all energy sources?
Between all energy sources, there was a stimulus that enacted $500 million for all alternative energy sources overall.
According to Business Week on May 2nd, 2008, we don't think oil companies are paying enough taxes, says Josh Dorner, a spokesman from the Sierra Club. There are literally billions of dollars in giveaways and misguided schemes. Politicians have chosen big oil before clean energy. According to the World Wildlife Fund, climate change is listed as the #1 threat to polar bears and other animals in the Arctic. If nothing is done to reverse this situation, not only the only place will we be able to see polar bears by the year 2025 is in a zoo. As we all know, whatever affects animals today will affect humans tomorrow. Again, we like to caution you that we must work on preserving the planet and preventing the extinction of life. One way to do this is to switch to biofuels. Air pollution has led to many lung diseases among the elderly and very young. At this point in American society, there are record numbers of people suffering from asthma and other lung diseases. The Union of Concerned Scientists stated that air pollution aggravates asthma, the #1 children's health problem. Air pollution also causes diseases and even premature death among the vulnerable populations, including children, the elderly, and people with lung disease. The Union of Concerned Scientists wanted to state that air pollution is responsible for more deaths than motor vehicle accidents and ranks higher than many other serious health threats. On July 1st, 2007, the Union of Concerned Scientists stated that Americans' current energy system is dominated by fossil fuels, which pose serious stress to our health and environment and leave us vulnerable to price spikes and supply shortages. With the threat of global warming becoming increasingly urgent, we must make responsible energy choices today that ensure a safe, reliable power supply and a healthy environment for future generations. They went on to say that, fortunately, there are practical and affordable ways to achieve this goal. Homegrown renewable energy resources can help reduce our dependence on polluting fossil fuels. These clean energy sources can also help stabilize energy prices, stimulate the development of innovative new technology, and create high-quality jobs and other economic benefits. And I like to clash some of my opponents' arguments. We are using switchgrass, and switchgrass is already growing in the prairie in the midsection, which is, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wyoming, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be, so we're not really based on corn ethanol or the other type of biofuels that my opponent said is. And in cross-sex, my partner asked my opponent, about something about hydroelectricity, and they stated that water is running out. But if water is running out, then why use hydroelectricity? It's not really common sense. But some energy costs are not included in consumer utility or gas bills, nor are they paid for by the companies that produce or sell the energy. These include human health problems caused by air pollution from the burning of coal and oil, damage to land from coal mining, and to miners from black lung disease. Environmental degradations caused by global warming, acid rain, and water pollution, and national security causes such as protecting foreign sources of oil. These scientists who are experts in the field are obviously very concerned about the current conditions as well as the future of the world. If we continue to live the way we have been living for the past 100 years, Judge, it is in our best interest to listen to the experts and change the way we conduct business with big oil. Excuse me? That is why my partner and I are convinced that the resolution will solve the problem. According to the NRDC, they say that biofuels are a viable alternative to petroleum. They are renewable, cost-competitive, global warming busting fuel produced from plants grown right here on American soil. Scientists, farmers, and auto experts agree that biofuel can help free America from oil independence. The NRDC further states that biofuels can be produced using perennial prairie grass, like switchgrass, not growing crops like corn or soybeans. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
In your speech, you stated that air pollution will be as a result of oil use. What if we don't use oil and instead use an alternative energy?
Then we will. Excuse me, say it again.
In your speech, you stated that on the negative, if you use oil, then we will be forced to make air pollution. What if we don't use oil and instead use an alternative energy?
Then the biofuels are the best alternative energy. So
How do you,
that would like less dependence
Okay.
on the oil.
how would you compare, for instance, biofuel and hydroelectricity when in 2005 alone, hydroelectricity made 25% of the world's total energy and biofuels made 0%, I mean 0.5% of the world's total energy in 2005 alone?
Biofuel has been improved, and we're improving year by year.
Okay. How much total energy does biofuel produce currently?
Excuse me?
How much total energy does biofuel produce currently? I mean,
Okay.
worldwide.
Worldwide,
Yeah.
well, it says here by the Progressive Policy Institute, they say that perhaps more than any of the alternative fuel, homegrown biodiesel can lessen our dependence on oil from some overseas sources. DOE-sponsored research shows that for every unit of fossil fuel energy expanded to make biodiesel, 3.2 units of energies are gained. No other vehicle fuel has as high a positive energy balance. In contrast, it actually takes 1.2 units of fossil fuel energy to yield 1 unit of petroleum diesel. And as Diesel himself predicted, studies suggest that biodiesel production can be a boon to farmers. The NBB said his U.S. Department of Agriculture research that concludes that 100 million gallons a year boost in demand for biodiesel would increase revenue for U.S. soybean farmers by more than $112.
That evidence
Really?
piece was comparing biofuel. Oh, okay. Good morning. My name is Coco Lasse, and I come from the Mount Vernon School debate team. I am on a negative position on the resolution that the federal government should increase tax incentives for biofuels. In their speech, the opponents stated that oil use will increase global warming. Further oil use will increase global warming. First, I would like to state that we're not proposing, as the negative position, we're not proposing oil, and it's not our job to propose oil. But on the other hand, biofuels have some unknown effects of global warming that they don't know about. My evidence base, despite its claim of clean energy dependent and environmental benefit as a result of implementing a biofuel alternative energy source, Brazil is still the largest producer of CO2 emissions and has seen hikes in its level of CO2 in the years of biofuel development. The increase of CO2 pollution Brazil spewed out between 1994 and 2005 surpassed the rate of its economic growth. A study published Monday in the Folha de Sao Paulo newspaper said carbon output over the past period grew 45% from democraticunderground.com. This is basically saying that when using biofuels, this has some unknown global warming changes that they don't know about. But there's proposing biofuels as a source of reducing global warming as in opposition from oil. But we're not proposing oil once again. And then again, on the other hand, biofuel actually increases the chance of global warming actually happening and increases the overall CO2 emissions. On the other hand, they propose switchgrass development. Well, some unknown side effects of switchgrass development is water use, and second of all, pesticides. In addition, all biofuels development whatsoever is dependent on the use of water, and the amount of fresh water available is also depleting at a fast rate. The supply of fresh water is running out. Already 1 person in 5 has no access to drinking water from BBC.com. Water is essential for human life, and this is one thing that cannot be sacrificed in order for the worker to create energy. The value of a human being is far more important than that of any biofuel source has to offer, and other alternative energy sources such as wind and solar energy do not require energy, but can still produce highly efficient energy. What I'm saying is biofuels is taking away something without providing something in return. They're basically taking away our water supply, inputting pesticides into our natural habitats and into our drinking water, and then they're offering nothing in return. I asked the affirmative, how much energy has biofuel produced in general? Less than 2%. How much funding has it received? More than $16 billion from worldwide. You have to look at the facts on all sides. You cannot say one source is basically reliant and the other is not reliant. We're not proposing oil. We're proposing other forms of fuels. We're proposing wind, solar, hydroelectricity, anyone that is better than biofuel, and all of those are better than biofuels. Furthermore, I would like to state that as a result of pesticides, of biofuels, pesticides have entered our natural drinking water. USGS states before the mid-1970s, it was thought that the soil acted as a protective filter that stopped pesticides from reaching groundwater. Studies have shown that this is not the case. Pesticides can reach water-bearing aquifers below ground from application of crop fields, spillage and contained surface water, accidental spills and leaks, improper disposal, and even through injection of waste material into well. What I'm basically saying, you might not see how this relates to biofuels, but let me connect it. When you're using biofuel, you're basically using corn ethanol, which is the best biofuel producer. And when we're using corn ethanol, then there are cornfields in the United States and foreign countries. Now, what this leads to is increased pesticides and increased planting by farmers. This, in long terms, affects our drinking water. Thank you.
Are you aware that biofuels can slash global warming pollution?
Do you have evidence to support that?
Yes, I do. And it says here by the NRDC fund, they say that by 2050, biofuels, especially cellulosic biofuels, can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 1.7 billion tons per year. And that's equal to more than 80% of current transportation-related emissions.
Okay. Do you know, for example, that Brazil is the largest user of biofuel, and as a result, they are the fourth largest CO2 emitting nation in the world?
Yes, but are you aware that it's food plus fuel? It's not food versus fuel.
It is food versus fuel because the crops that we're using for food is the same crops that we're using for biofuels. Now, if you don't have food or fuel, then you have to debate of it. That's when the debate comes into. When you're using one as fuel, then all the crops go for fuel. If you're using one as food, all the crops go for food. Now, if you have to debate for them, the fuel rises its prices and the food also rises its prices. That is the argument of food versus fuel, not food or fuel. It's food versus fuel because the one price versus another price.
Are you aware that biofuels can be cost competitive with gasoline and diesel?
How?
Well, by the NRDC fund, they said that economics estimate that by 2015 we could produce biofuels for sale at prices equal or lower than average gas and diesel prices.
Currently, we're in 2009. We need something that is beyond today. Oil prices have dropped in the last, for instance, 2008, the summer of 2008, as I remember, oil prices rose and everybody else is complaining. As of right now, nobody is complaining because oil prices have dropped. Because the United States has an increase in its oil production. Now, if we continue to do that, we can still reach our target. And when we invest in other biofuels such as wind, solar, and hydroelectricity, for instance, those will be available too. So there are other biofuels, there are other sources besides from biofuels that are better than biofuel.
Do you have evidence of that? Thank you.
All right. Judges, I believe that me and my partner should win this case for several reasons. Our arguments and contentions were clear. We gave a lot of direct clash. We can answer all of our opponent's arguments confidently. We stumped our opponents in some of our questions. But right now, I'd like to respond to most of the arguments I've heard throughout the whole round. One point I would like to stress out is that the main biofuel that we're proposing is switchgrass, not corn ethanol like my opponents have been stressing or hammering into the debate. Switchgrass. We can also use other biofuels such as used cooking oil. We can use soybeans, grasses, and canola oil, and we can use all of these other alternatives. We don't have to use deforestation. The switchgrass could be grown in the prairie, the midsection, the heart of our country. There would be no deforestation, so greenhouse gas emissions will not rise. Another thing they talked about is how one of their main arguments was that water is running out. But they keep on saying that we can use an alternative energy such as hydroelectricity. Now, if we can all use our common sense right now, hydroelectricity, it comes out of water. If our water supply is running out, why use hydroelectricity as an energy? It's just not connecting. Another thing they talked about is that corn, again, the corn ethanol. They talked about how exporting billions of dollars of our country. They talked about it, and I would like to just reinforce it. Even though you're saying that, well, you're not going to use oil, we can't stay with oil. And in your hydroelectricity, biofuels is the better answer to hydroelectricity. So biofuels is better. So even if you are proposing hydroelectricity, I really wouldn't recommend it. I would really want to use biofuels because it's way better than hydroelectricity. You also talked about how we would use a lot of water and fertilizers for the switchgrass. We will not. Biofuels can offer major land use benefits. Certain biofuel crops could actually improve land that's no longer productive. Switchgrass is a promising source of cellulosic biofuel. It's a native perennial prairie grass that doesn't require a lot of pesticides and fertilizers. It uses water efficiently, has low nitrogen runoff, very low erosion and increased soil carbon, and also provides good wildlife habitat. So all of this hoax that it will use a lot of pesticides and fertilizers, it's hurting our environment, is not true. We don't have to use a lot of water. We do not have to use a lot of pesticides and fertilizers. It's a hoax. They come up with a lot of excuses for biofuels. They just do not want to use it. They're very close-minded. Another thing I would like to just restate some of my arguments. Biofuels is the better answer because it decreases global warming. Unlike my opponents that makes biofuels seem that they're gonna increase global warming. It's really gonna decrease it. We are exporting so much money out of billions of dollars for oil that they're saying that they don't want to use oil anymore. However, if we can grow domestically or domesticate energy in our country, why not do it? Hydroelectricity is not the answer. Hybrids, biofuels is the answer. And we can also switch to biofuels with ease. We can use the same gas pumps that we have, just replace the gas with biofuel pumps, with biofuels. Sorry. So it's the same exact thing. We can switch it with ease. If it's cleaner alternative, is the best alternative, why not do it? Hamid, thank you.
My partner and I feel that we should win the round because we've provided facts and evidence to support all of our arguments, such as water levels, land consumption, and global warming. To begin with, we stated that U.S. water levels are rapidly decreasing, and the fresh-to-salt water ratio is significantly staggering in terms of 69% salt water and 1% fresh water for a total of 70% water upon the surface of Earth. This is an alarming factor in relation to the biofuel plan instituted by my opponents. Moreover, we ran the argument that biofuel will encroach upon our land in order to utilize land for corn, ethanol, and switchgrass as they propose. In our conjecture, it is rather naive to consume land for an energy source that is highly unpredictable. Finally, we addressed the affairs associated with global warming, being that pesticides are utilized upon crops such as corn. Those pesticides can cause water pollution and can be emitted into the air by the burning of corn, ethanol, and switchgrass. Also, biofuel emits nitrous oxide emissions, which are worse than CO2 emissions. During the midst of the round, my opponent stated that they plan to switch to biofuel, but fail to yield to the overall cost versus energy efficiency. Biofuel investments reap no benefits. The opponents may argue for more biofuel investments, but what they don't know is that biofuel investments are already being made. Despite the global economic slump, total clean energy investment last year grew 5% to $155 billion. Biofuel attracted $60.9 billion, or 9% less than in 2007. Biofuels continue to attract a large amount of global alternative energy, meanwhile producing little energy in return. $16.9 billion in spending could be used to resolve other world needs instead of investing in an efficient alternative energy source despite biofuel. My opponents also proposed switchgrass, but supply is not sure to meet demand. Also, they argued that hydroelectricity is contradicting our water argument. However, hydroelectricity, if they did not know, regenerates water and is a last resort to what we originally proposed. Also, my opponent stated the use of other biofuels besides switchgrass. However, they only defended switchgrass, which is an unsure source already. Also, they stated that we can switch to equipment for biofuel. However, most cars are not suited for biofuel, thus replicating a contradiction on behalf of their argument. I'm aware that my opponents attacked hybrid cars, but they are reliable and are currently in use, while biofuel is in the experimental stage. You should vote negative because we have presented our arguments clearly and concisely, and therefore we have successfully made our contention that exemplifies the fact that biofuels are not the way to go. And that concludes my negative rebuttal on behalf of the biofuel case.
Hi, I'm Margarita Morales, and I'm representing the judges for this final round for the elementary school debate. And the decision was a 3-0 for Mount Vernon, representing the negative side. The case was for biofuels from the affirmative, and I think from the start, the speech kind of started, the 1AC started off a little rocky, which kind of made it a little difficult for the rest of the debate. You know, I think you clearly have to say in the 1AC the alternative energy of biofuel, which is the switchgrass, and you have to state all the reasons, you know, why it's beneficial. You kind of touched on that, but you didn't really bring that to light that much until really the rebuttal. So it should have been said a little earlier. You want to kind of get it right out there. And then on the negative side, you know, they really said that their two issues were water and pesticide problems with the use of the switchgrass. So you really have to see, what effect that's having on your case, your proposal. And I think, you mentioned some good pieces of evidence, which was really good. That you need water. Pesticide gets into the water, and that causes a problem. And these are the problems. And but then there's kind of a confusion. You're talking about that. Is an issue with the switchgrass, but then you're talking about the use of wind, solar, and hydroelectric power, which is better than the biofuels. So you had like these two different things going on, and so it was kind of like this back and forth, and it was a little like complicated. So I think you want to make it a little bit more organized and say, okay, these are the two issues in the round. You just want to say it straight up. You said it, but you just want to be a little more forward with that. And I think a lot of the best parts of a lot of the best answers were kind of towards the end of the debate. So you want to make sure that you bring a lot of that forward. And I think even in the negative, there was an issue. You had mentioned biofuel investments. And speaking about cost versus energy efficiency, you kind of want to bring that up a little sooner, and I don't really see why that was so important. I think you could have really focused more with the water and the pesticide, which you did, which is why you won, because we can see that there's issues with the switch the switch grass, which which the affirmative didn't really question too much of. So now I'm gonna have Kevin give his critique.
So as Margarita was explaining, one of the things that we had problems with was trying to figure out exactly, there was some issue in terms of advocacy of alternative energies. The affirmative, like Margarita was saying in the very beginning, it's good to be clear about what alternative energy you're advocating. And throughout the rest of the round, the negative began discussing other alternative energies in order to prove why the affirmative's alternative energy was bad. And that made the debate a bit muddled in terms of exactly who's advocating what. But the affirmative was supposed to be advocating switchgrass, or that's what they ended up saying at the end of the round. And as for my eyes, the way I saw it is that a lot of the negatives arguments, while they may not have been specific to switchgrass, they could be applied to switchgrass in the same way. And even if they're not applied to switchgrass, the other alternative energies that the affirmative would support would still fall under the negatives arguments. So I think the negative is also, I really like these arguments that the negative is making. These arguments about water levels, I think are very good. And also there's the argument about Brazil. It's an example that I think is empirical, and I think it poses a problem for the affirmative, although not a terrible large problem. But this is where we get to this whole issue of alternative energies, because the whole Brazil example is only relevant if you're talking about ethanol, but your affirmative deals primarily with switchgrass. Right, so this is one of those instances where you want to say, look, this Brazil example doesn't really apply to us. We're dealing with switchgrass, and you guys want to push it on them and say, well, can you guys only deal with switchgrass, or do you guys have to do all types of biofuels? And this is one of those questions, where we're saying, what alternative energy are you guys doing? And this is where it got a bit muddled at the end, but we ended up siding with the negative because at least I saw it as, they have more arguments that there's at least a risk of those arguments being true, versus you guys, the affirmative doesn't really have much to hedge back against these arguments about water levels and anything else. So yeah. So now we'll have Richard Connolly from the NYUDL give his critique.
Again, congratulations. It was a good round between both. I just have a couple of comments. One, and I noticed in another round you had done the same. You mentioned extinction early in the round, and you're not pulling through or extending it. If you tell us what do you mean by extinction, and if that is the case, right, weigh their extinction with their impact. Their impact saying, well, if you do this, it'll cost money or whatever arguments they're using against you. So make sure you bring that up. So it's a good point. The next one, the whole hydro situation. At first, I thought they were going to catch you with a catch-22 in terms of, well, if you're telling us the water's running out, how are you using hydro? Of course, in the later speech, you did address that and say that's renewable, but you should have had that before. You should have known before that it was renewable, and that's what they were trying to state. Because if not, then you would catch them and say, well, wait a minute, you're saying water's running out, right? But then you're using hydro, and that's what you kind of mentioned. But then later on, his last speech, he mentioned that it was renewable. And the reason why that's important, because that goes into the whole pesticide issue. And that's what helped with us, with most of the judges. We looked at the pesticide that is seeping down, and it's going to affect the water supply. So that was basically the arguments that I wanted. But another good point is when you're cross-exing, make sure you're listening exactly to what your opponent's saying. There's one or two times when I know your opponent, you were cross-examining, and if you listen to what they say, you could, dissect their arguments while you're up here instead of just, trying to read to the next question. But that's basically it. It was a good debate, and congratulations. So I guess that's it. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this championship debate round. On the basis of the judges' evaluation, Mount Vernon won on a 3-0 decision and is now the champion of the 2009 Elite Eight tournament. On behalf of the debaters, I would like to thank Mr. Jack Heathcott, director of the television studio here at the Newark Student Center, for providing the facilities for this championship round. The regular season competitions from which the Elite Eight emerged are sponsored by the Jersey Urban Debate League. The Jersey Urban Debate League, or JUDL, helps sustain academic debate in 32 elementary and secondary schools in the greater Newark area. It is also helping to establish a collegiate debate team at Rutgers Newark. The JUDL is sustained by generous grants from the Victoria Foundation, the Geraldine Dodge Foundation, the Terrell Fund, and the Prudential Foundation. It is part of a national movement to revive academic debate in America's urban centers and is affiliated with the National Association for Urban Debate, the Associated Leaders of Urban Debate, and the National Forensic League. On behalf of District Superintendent Dr. Clifford Janey, the Newark Public Schools, and the Jersey Urban Debate League, I thank you for watching this segment of Word Warriors 2009. Debate is the language of democracy. Debate changes hearts and minds to value education.